Hello, my dear students of Class 7, and welcome to another class with me, your tutor, Atsinyo Sekose. This tutoring is coming from the Directorate of School Education, Nagaland. So today we have a new topic that is, you will find it on Chapter 5, page 71. And we will be discussing this lesson till page 74. Our topic is titled as Quality, written by John Galsworthy. So that is what we are going to discuss today. Now, if you take a look at the topic, I want you to think of certain things which has qualities. Maybe the clothes that you are wearing right now is made of good quality, or for that matter, the toys that you use to play with, such as maybe Kinder Joy toys, maybe those things you find it of good quality. So we are going to discuss something about good qualities, but we are also going to talk about an artist, all right? And not any ordinary artist, but a shoemaker. So see, when I say artist and a shoemaker, maybe you are wondering, a shoemaker is not an artist. But if we think about it, it is also an art. So we are going to discuss about art and good quality art from the perspective of the narrator. That is, you will find it in our first paragraph. I is referring to the narrator, the author, who is John Galsworthy. What is art and what is good qualities? That's what we are going to find out. We are going to find out about a person who makes shoes. So that is his art or his trade. And I'm sure right now you are thinking of more examples. When I say art and artist, maybe we usually associate it with, people who draw things on the wall, making mural painting, or for that matter, drawing things on a piece of paper. Those are, of course, those people are also artists, but we are going to think one step further into who is an art and what makes an art, or what is a good quality trade. So that's what we are going to find out today. Before we look into our text, just as the way we usually do, we are going to find out some few new words that we would be discovering. So in paragraph 1, you will find the word I, which is the narrator, like I said. Then number 2 here, by street, which means nearby, or it looks very odd in our context, in our story, it looks very odd, all right? Now, number 3, distinction. What does it mean here? A marked difference, a very different thing that you can make out, contrast. We have already come across the word contrast. Now, in paragraph 3, you will find this in the footnote. Here we have a very strange letter here. Ad is an art. So that's how it is being written there. Now, why is that so? Because we are going to talk about a shoemaker who is a German, all right? So this is the accent that he uses. So if we translate it, it would be, it is an art. So that's what we would mean here. It is an art. And when I say accent, it means distinctive way, a very different way of pronouncing language. That is accent. Now, we also get really confused with accent and, the way people speak in different languages. Let's take the example of English. The way I'm speaking in English may be different to you, and the way somebody else, let's say a Japanese, who speak in English would be different. So just in that manner, a German who is speaking in English would probably have a different distinctive way of pronouncing the language or the word. So that is accent. Now, we need not worry about accent, but when we are talking about English, we tend to think that if a person has a certain accent, that is very good English, but it is not so. As long as you are understanding, as long as you're able to communicate with someone with clarity, that is English itself, all right? So that's what I want to clarify. Now let's take a look at paragraph 3, point number 6, some essence. Now this is a phrase. Some essence here is referring to in our context, in our lesson here, basic good quality, basic good quality, all right? Then paragraph 6, you will find retiring, which means leaving. Point number 8, portion, part, or in other words, a part of something. Now, paragraph 9, qualify. What does it mean here? Qualify here means to prove or to explain further. And paragraph 13, point number 10, I take them, you see, you notice the word here, DEM, I take them off your bill. So that is how our story, the German, the shoemaker is speaking. This is an accent, like I said, which means he is not, the phrase here means he's not going to charge money. All right, so those are some new words and phrases that we would be discovering along the way. Now I suggest you look down into your lesson and we would discuss it paragraph wise. So we have learned that we are going to discuss about quality, we are going to discuss about an artist who is a shoemaker, and in the first paragraph, the narrator, I knew him from the days of my extreme youth, which means the narrator, or John Galsworthy, knew about this shoemaker when he was in his prime age or extreme youth, because he made my father's boots. That means this person, this shoemaker, must be very old because he also made his father's boots. He lived with his elder brother. Now he has an elder brother in his shop, which means he lives in that shop, which was in a small by street in a fashionable part of London. So that shop, it looks very odd because it is located nearby very fashionable, sophisticated, we can also say, shops in London. So it looked very different. The shop had a certain quiet distinction. The narrator or the author further described it as it is very distinctive. It has a distinctive mark. And what is that mark? It has no sign upon it other than the name, the Gisler Brothers. So that is the name of the shop, the Gisler Brothers. You may underline that. And in the window, a few pairs of boots. Now this is a shop, and here the narrator is saying that it has only few pairs of shoes, or we can say boots. Now, if we think about, compare it with other stores, a shoe store, I'm sure you will find varieties of different kinds of shoes, and not just one particular shoe, but different kinds and in store in different sizes and so on. But it is very different from the rest because it has no sign, and also it has got only few pairs of boots. Why is that so? Because he made only what was ordered. So people would go into his shop and order and then buy. That's why he does not have lots of shoes to sell. And what he made never failed to fit. I want you to underline that. What kind of shoes does he made? Or we can say, what did the narrator or the author say about his shoes or his trade? So the kind of shoes that he made, it never failed to fit. It always fit perfectly, and the narrator or the author further said that it is as though it is made in a very mysterious and wonderful way. So that's what we find in the second paragraph. Now in the third paragraph, we find that the poet is remembering that I remember well my shy remarks one day. One fine day, he, in a very shy way, he asked something to this shoemaker. Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gessler? So that's what he asked. I'm going to repeat that, all right? Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gisler? And his answer, given with a sudden smile from out of the redness of his beard, which means he has a red beard, it is an art, remember? In other words, he's saying it is an art. From here, we learn that this shoemaker or the Mr. Gisler is very fond of making shoes, and he's very skilled, and he thinks about his trade as an art, all right, as a creation, we can also say. Then in paragraph 4, it was not possible to go to him very often. Now, why is that so? Is it because the shop is not accessible by many people? We find the answer here. His boots lasted terribly, which means in our footnote we find that it means it lasts very long. Now we are coming to the word quality. In other words, he made very fine, good quality boots. That's why it does not get wear out. Once one bought it, we can wear it for a very long period of time. That's why it is not always possible to go to him very often. Having something beyond the temporary, some essence of boot stitched into them. So that's what we find here. That's why the narrator or the author thinks that he must have made some very good, basic, essential qualities into making of his boots or his art, we can see. In paragraph 4, one went in, not as into most shops. The narrator or the author is describing how one enters his shop, not unlike any other customers or any other shoppers who goes into a shop randomly, choose and goes out, but they entered with respect as though they are entering a church. So that is the kind of service that he gives, and people also have respect for this shoemaker. And sitting on the single wooden chair waited, a guttural sound and the tip-tap of his slippers beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without coat, a little bent, in leather apron. So that is how you would find him if you entered his shop. And from here we can learn that he is not very well dressed, so that tells us that he must be simply making his ends meet, all right? But he is very proud of his trade, with sleeves turned back, blinking as if awakened from some dream of boots. So he's really dedicated, passionate in making shoes. That's what we can tell here. In the 5th paragraph, and I would say, "How do you do, Mr. Gisler? Could you make me a pair of Russian leather boots?" And without a word, he would leave me retiring, leaving whence he came, from where he came, and he would bring out a portion, a part of leather, and I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, inhaling the incense of his trade. Here it means he would sit and wait for the shoemaker while he breathed in the smell of leather, because it must be, I'm sure, as it is more like a workshop for making shoes, it smells of leather. Soon he would come back holding in his hand a piece of gold brown leather. With eyes fixed on it, he would remark, "What a beautiful piece." So that is how he would say about what a beautiful piece. So even he knew the good quality that he gives. That is good quality of what? Leather. He always made his shoes with beautiful, good quality piece of leather. When I too had admired it, he would speak again, "When do you want them?" And I would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." And he would say, "Tomorrow fortnight?" Or if he were his elder brother, "I will ask my brother." So see, from here we can tell that the elder brother, maybe he assisted his younger brother here, but Mr. Gisler, the shoemaker, is very skilled, very good at what he does. So if it is, instead of Mr. Gisler here, if it is his elder brother, he would say that, "I would ask my brother." That's what he would have replied. And from here again we can tell that he always tried to keep his word, does his work on time. We can also say very dedicated in it. That's why if the customers want it very early, he also tried to make it very early for them. Now in the 7th paragraph, "Then I would murmur, 'Thank you, good morning, Mr. Gisler, good morning,' he would reply, still looking at the leather in his hand." Now I want you to take a look at the word "good morning" here. Maybe it was around the time of morning, but in the English culture, when we say good morning, it can also be assumed, all right, that the conversation or whatever the two people are talking about has come to an end. So we learned that good morning is used for greeting when we started a conversation. But in the culture, all right, like I said, after the conversation is over, you can also end it with good morning, which means it has ended, all right? The conversation stopped there. You can also say good afternoon and then the conversation can stop, or good evening for that matter. So that is one of the culture here. So that tells us that that's how they went about with ordering boots, and that's how he also gave his service to his customers. So that's what we find there. And you know, the narrator or the author here has a very big awe impression of Mr. Geisler, because he knew that Mr. Geisler made the finest boots, all right, boots that are of greatest quality, and he also has a great respect for him. So that's what we will find here. Now in our next page, paragraph 8, I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, Mr. Geisler, that last pair of boots creaked, you know. In other words, at one particular point of time, he remembered that he had complained about one defect of a boot, of a pair of boots that he had ordered from Mr. Geisler. And the complaint was that the boots are making a creaky sound or a squeaky sound. So when he reported that, now Mr. Geisler, he is very surprised, and without replying, he was waiting for Mr. Or we can say the author to explain further, to qualify, in other words, to explain or to prove that it is having a defect. It shouldn't have creaked, he said. It did, I'm afraid. You got them wet before they found themselves. So that's how he speaks with the accent. That's how he speaks with the accent. I don't think so. So maybe he was thinking that, wondering that maybe you have got it wet. You know, when even if we bought a new pair of shoes, and if we wet it a little too early, it gets worn out really fast. So maybe that's what he is also suspecting here. But when that was not the case, at that he lowered his eyes, which means he was disappointed with himself, as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. In other words, the narrator or the author started to feel very sorry because he mentioned this defect in the making of his boots. What did he say to this? Send them back. In other words, send them back, he said. I will look at them. So that is the sincerity, that service that he gave to his customers, you know. When they complained about even the slightest defects, he would say, send it back. And we learned that he also pointed out, some boots, in other words, some boots, he continued slowly, are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill. In other words, he's saying that if I cannot do anything about it, all right, some boots are from birth itself, while making it, it is prone to having defects, certain defects. So if I cannot do anything about it, I would not charge the money. In other words, I would give you back the money. So that is the extent of sincerity he has. And we also see the quality of honesty in his dealings or in his trade. You know, when he is, even when he gets the slightest defect, he would actually go and tell that customer that he will not charge any money for that. So that's what we find here. We find here a shoemaker who is very old but who is very skillful, and the shoes that he made lasted very long. That's why he does not get many customers, and also he is very honest in his trade, in his business, we can say. And that is some of the good qualities that we see here, not just in the art, all right, but in the person. So that's what we have here. We would be discussing further in the next class. For now, let's take a look at the questions. On page 78, working with the text, answer the following questions. How would you go about with these questions then? Number 1, what was the author's opinion about Mr. Geisler as a boot maker? The narrator, in other words, what did he say about it? His boots lasted terribly long, which means it lasted very long. It never failed to fit. It always fits perfectly. And he also says, he also has this impression that it is mysterious and wonderful. His shoes, in other words. Number 2, why did the author visit the shop so infrequently? Why did he hardly go and visit the shop? Why? Because it is not possible, because the shoes that he ordered from Mr. Gisler are of finest quality. It lasted terribly long. So that's what we can point it out here. Question number 3. What was the effect on Mr. Gisler of the author's remark about a certain pair of boots? How did Mr. Gisler react when the narrator or the author reported to him about a certain pair of boots that is having a defect? That is, remember, it creaked. That's what he reported. Now, Mr. Gisler, how did he react? He reacted with surprise and disbelief, because he was not able to believe that the kind of shoes that he made has a defect. But he also pointed out that in some case, some shoes from birth, it is prone to defect. So that's what you can point out in those questions and in those answers, in fact. And I hope you would work out these questions and answers. And if you are curious to find out more about what happened to this old shoemaker, I would suggest you continue with your reading, and we would discuss the rest of the lesson in the next class. For now, what you can do is you can also try to have a conversation with your parents and discuss about qualities, goods, qualities in the market, and how it affects certain people, such as like Mr. Gisler, who is working sincerely, honestly, but who is struggling to keep up with customers. So you can also discuss something about that. And on that note, we would be winding up today's class. Thank you all very much for joining me.